Hello, I'm Toycat, and breaking news, Pope Francis is officially dead, with his funeral scheduled for the 26th of April. And just in case you don't believe me, well, the Holy See actually put out a statement where they show these images of him in a coffin, and so as you can tell, the leader of the world's largest singularly person-led religion, the Catholic Church, is in fact dead. He has the largest number of followers of any one person on Earth, with 1.39 billion, but interestingly also is the leader of the Vatican City. The Vatican City is the world's smallest country. Here it is for scale, you really have to zoom in to find it, and what's notable is that they are an absolute monarchy, with their absolute monarch being elected as the Pope. And so if you want to learn about the election process for the world's smallest country, that's what we're going to go into with today's video. Because as you will know, if you are a follower of Pope Francis, death is not the end, but the start of something, and in this case, it's the start of an election process. So first things first, Pope Francis was a wildly notable Pope. I mentioned before I spoke to my grandmother, I even sent her a condolence text because of this. I haven't got a response yet. That's how devastated I assume she is. But Pope Francis was a really notable Pope in the work that he did, but also in the fact that he was from Argentina, making him the first Pope not from Afro-Eurasia and the first Pope from anywhere in the New World, which is a really, really wild thing to be able to say. And so, yeah, if we look at this, you can see that if there's going to be another Pope, you might statistically say, okay, they're definitely going to be Italian. And yeah, this makes sense because if we look at the electors for the Pope, you can see that actually Italy still has the most electors, and so there are 17 Italian people who theoretically could become the next Pope. And if you go by pure odds alone, then yeah, we're going to get an Italian Pope, right? Except actually, one of the notable things about the election process is they specifically are trying to get a new Pope from a new part of the world. They've had enough Italian and European popes, and they're trying to get a Pope that is from somewhere else to help the church expand worldwide. This is something which is really, really interesting. You know, Pope Francis basically started this process by having a hugely different global vision, and again, it's wild to be able to say this for a religious leader, but social justice ideals. Pope Francis basically tried to transform the church, and it looks like if they follow in his footsteps, they're going to try to do this again. And so what's going to happen is any cardinal below the age of 80 will have to go and vote in the papal enclave. There's about 138 of these people, and out of those 138, 9 of those popes will have to lead the election process, so they are randomly selected, and from the rest, there is a process. From the rest, there are elections held until there is unanimous approval. And what's really interesting is that every day they signal to the world if they have elected a new pope with either black or white smoke. If black smoke comes out, then there is no pope. Whereas if there is white smoke, then good news, there is a new pope elected, as long as he agrees with being elected. I can't imagine you get that far in the process, but they have to say accepto, because they are in, effectively Italy after all, and then they choose a new papal name, so they could choose Francis or John, or they can choose whatever they'd like to, but they probably should pick one from the list. And then what happens is once the pope has been elected, they now have a new pope and a new leader of the Vatican City. This theoretically could take up to 3 years, although that we're talking about 1271, the last time this happened. And yeah, what's interesting is that this your current set of cardinals is the most diverse that have been around. There is a lot from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, and this is reflecting Francis's goal of mirroring the church's global reach. There's even a Ukrainian clergyman based in Australia who is 45 years old, and so yeah, this map is the wrong map. This map is especially relevant because basically, although we could get another European pope, there's 3 cardinals who come from the UK. Maybe that's going to happen. There's a couple of cardinals coming from, there's actually 4 coming from India. The truth is they are looking to expand elsewhere, and although at this point it's mostly speculation, there are a lot of very interesting ones on here. So we've got, I believe, Hungary, Venezuela, Ghana out here as really interesting choices, or a Filipino pope would be absolutely shocking, right? There are a huge number of Filipino Catholics, I don't need to tell you that actually, but like, the truth is that like picking a pope who has not looked like all of the previous popes is what you could really cynically describe as like diversity reaching the tops of the world's largest religion. But the truth is, maybe a lot of people in Africa would start to be more down with the Catholicism if they saw a pope that represented them. And the same is true for Southeast Asia. Is that a logical thing? And the same is true for South America, although I think they're plenty Catholic already. But what's interesting is if they're trying to pick a cardinal from a brand new country that hasn't been picked before, the logical choice choice, right? And the reason this came up in this idea for this video is, well, logically, after Italy and after excluding Europe, the country that has the most cardinals and therefore the highest chance of being picked is actually the United States, followed briefly by Brazil. Obviously, Brazil is in South America, which they've already gone for, but a United Statesian president, a president from this country, one of these states, is something that is entirely possible, and I think that there are a few reasons this couldn't occur. If you ever look into the history of popes, by the way, you'll find out that, like, sorry, this is the wrong article. Sorry, this is the wrong article. If you look into the history of popes, you'll find out that, like, actually being a pope was a violent job. They effectively led a country in the days of Sixtus and Clement, and even in the days of Eusebius. It's absolutely wild the way that, by the way, being that leader was such a dangerous job that it's like, oh yes, Pope Boniface came into conflict with Philip IV of France and allegedly died from the, although unlikely, died from the effects of ill treatment a month before. What a wild coincidence. Basically, yeah, also, I can't believe that this features here. Francis met with J.D. Vance, which is whatever. Anyway, so the interesting thing here is the fact that if we look at the list of murdered popes, it kind of, they stop around the 1200s because that's when the church stops being this giant political entity, but there are still some holdovers from that time period. And one of those is that they generally try not to be, they try not to have a pope from a giant world power because they would like to be, if not in the early days, in the very early days, maybe it made sense, but now they're trying to be a politically neutral body, or rather, a politically active body that has no military. I mean, let's be honest, how much military do you think you can fit in this city? There's no runway, they have no F-35s, not a single one on order, if you'll believe it. Their navy is, you don't look into their navy, it's pathetic. The truth is, the Vatican City doesn't have a lot of hard power now, but like many former great nations, that has still resulted in a lot of soft power, and what's interesting is, therefore, you actually don't even though there's a lot of soft power to be had from the Pope being from the US, it's actually kind of a conflict of interest, and so a United Statesian Pope is possible, but unlikely. Then it's Brazil, okay, possible, but like South America, and so after looking at like the most likely options, you then have to say, okay, from all of the remaining places, by the way, I guess the guy must have been Colombian, not Venezuelan, based on this map, am I right about that? You know, Pietro, I'm gonna have to look up Pietro Parolin right here. Because, by the way, I did look into the 3-year papal election. But Pietro Gregory. Okay, let's find out. Is he famous enough to have his own Wikipedia page? He is not famous enough to have his own Wikipedia page. No, it's Pietro Parolin. I have no idea where I got Gregory from. Pietro Parolin. Ah, he is. He's an Italian Catholic. Wait, this is... He was born in province of Vincent. You know, I am starting to feel like this is a misleading flag to put on there. Anyway, but what's interesting is, yeah, they are currently, there is an Italian guy here, there's a Polish guy there, but they are looking to elect a very different pope, or are they? Right now, the Pope Francis's move has been to globalize the Pope, but will the next guy necessarily do the same thing? Well, that's the fun question, isn't it? So what happens to the Vatican during the transition? Well, apparently in the meantime, a senior cardinal known as the Carmeleggio certifies the Pope death and temporarily takes charge of the Vatican's finances and administrative affairs. Man, if you want to know about the Vatican's finances, by the way, I feel like it's rude to point out, but just a reminder, I am Catholic, I've gone through all the confessions and whatnot, but like the amount of wealth that the Catholic Church has, like, if you want to get wealthy, this is the easiest. Let me give you financial advice. Outside of don't spend beyond your means or, like boring advice like that, the easiest way to get wealthy is have money for a long time. The opportunity cost of money now, the more money you have now, the more money you can have in the future if you don't spend it. That's a critical part of it, particularly if you have any form of investment in anything. And so, yeah, if you've existed for 2,000 years, you're going to be wildly, wildly wealthy. By the way, I've actually been to the Vatican City for a video on this channel. It's very fun. Look at this. Look at this. This is too intense. This is silly level. But yeah, fun fact. Anyway, the Vatican City is electing a brand new leader, and that brand new leader might just be someone entirely different. Or they might go boring and they might pick another Italian. But yeah, what do you think is going to, what is going to happen with this? Well, I think, I want to, like, even though I think that there's going to be an initial response to this that is like, okay, Toy Cat, I know you love talking about politics from this neutral angle, but like the Pope is dead. But the truth is, the interesting thing about the Pope and the fact that he's been trying to change the Catholic Church is kind of this reminder. Oh, by the way, look at that. Argentinian president is going to attend the death. You know why? Oh, wait, Donald Trump is going to travel to the Vatican City. See, the fact that basically every country on this list. Sorry, I keep bringing up this map. Now I have to talk about it in this video. This is a really cool map. It's in Spanish, so confusingly, the United States is called the EEUU, you know, Estados Unidos. But if you look at this, you can see the really cool amount of transatlantic travel. I am still and always will be trying to push the bond between the Europe and the United States that we always should have. But what's notable is it's not just there's so many planes a day between Europe and the United States, but do you see this? Around midday, most of those planes start going westbound, and around midnight, realistically more like 10 p.m., what starts happening is the planes start coming back this way. Look at that, isn't that, wait, I'm doing these wrong. The planes start in the morning going to the west, by and large, but again, it's like it's a crazy thing where there's no rule against the fact that you could have flights go at any other time, but every single individual airline scheduler decides that this is the better way to do it, and so we have the same planes flying all the way west together, then all the way east together. It's like a flock of birds is what I'm saying, and I think that's interesting. Okay, so this was just a random map, but the Catholic Church is the point I want to finish this on, and it's the proof that if you want to have a body that lasts 2,000 years, you have to change it. You have to go from a body that says, literally, by the way, you know, this seems like a silly little joke, but like you have to go from a church that has, you know, like you have to change your rules and say, okay, actually, in the early days, it made sense that being married or having illegitimate children is entirely okay. And then at some point you decide being a moral authority is pretty important. And indeed, in the early days, you know, like having a little bit of violence in the popery, in the papal states, was entirely valid. And nowadays we say, ooh, yeah, if there was a murdered pope, if someone murdered a pope right now, especially if that guy then became pope, I don't think we'd be very happy about that. And indeed, the idea that you should kill yourself with a crucifix is, you know, it's a little bit brutal now, but in 67, you know, when that's fresh in your mind, you know, it's like the 9/11 of the Christian world, what happened in year 0. Was it in year 0 that Jesus died, actually? No, year 0 to be born. Crucifixion of Christ. Sorry, I might be, you know, let's find this out together. But AD 33, you know, they're like 34 years out. You know, like, times change, and anybody that wants to survive more than a lifetime, particularly, even really an entire lifetime, but if you want to last over multiple people's lifetimes, you have to have a body that is capable of changing. And the Pope and the papacy is something that has changed so wildly much over the times, and now they've worked out the best change they can have is acknowledging that the world is global. Not just do most of the... Isn't it nuts, by the way? There's never been a pope from, like, actual Asia, where all the people live, even though it's the continent that has over half the world's population. If you want to have a, you know, if you want people to feel like this is a representative religion, then there is some argument that just like how, like, I don't know, like the football World Cup every year that tries to go to a different continent, there is some argument that you've got to, as the power of the people in, you know, Africa and Asia increases, so too does their representation in global bodies if you want them to feel like it's a part of it. But on the other hand, I feel like if you're Italian, you're like, no, the guy I want the most, the guy I need the most is Cardinal Matteo Zuppi. Come on, Zuppi. But yeah, with that said, I hope you all enjoyed this video. You know, I'm putting my bet on Peter Turkson. But again, there's a real chance that they just end up having to do the election process and not getting in there. You know, or maybe Hungarian is diverse enough. Or maybe you go for like, you know, actually, no, I'm going for Luis Tagle. I feel like getting a Filipino pope, that's going to open some doors, you know? I feel like that's my official prediction. But we will find out in the next, you know, few weeks to few years if it goes on long enough. And I hope you're looking forward to that because, as always, second channel. Oh, I guess, yeah, second channel, don't care. Goodbye. Wait, I would like to remind you of this video's sponsor, the papacy. Have you ever considered sending your money to the world's smallest country? If so, there's a little box that you can put some money into, and you too can find it. And if you do it, you won't lose part of your legs, and maybe your left arm too. How does this even happen? Anyway, thank you, thank you, and goodbye. Or Nah, just kidding. Second channel, don't care.